Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 7.24 mid tier list. So, got a nice tier list here set up for you. Now, I don't have little mini guides like I have for the support tier list for each champion according to the runes. It's a lot more, well, they're about equally complicated for support and mid lane in terms of like different paths you can choose. I'll talk about some of them individually, but I'm going to try to keep this a lot shorter than my other, my core like support tier list video, but I still want to give it some good depth. And for the sake of brevity, I'm going to abbreviate that a little bit, but I will talk about some of the key runes and some of the key considerations you can think about in terms of those champions. And maybe later on, if people really like this, you know, if people want to see more mid-tier lists and top-tier lists and stuff like that, then later on I'll add in the little mini guides for it, depending on, you know, how popular this is. I did do a tier list video back in 7.17. It was pretty popular, but I have had more people asking me recently, can I do tier lists? Can I talk about some other positions other than just support? And the answer is yes, I will try. So I just want to preface by saying I am not a support. I am a support main, not a mid main, but obviously I play a ton of League of Legends. I think very analytically about everything, and the types of mid laners that are strong influence the types of supports that are also strong. So I am relatively in the know in terms of like overall meta game, like what's strong usually for most positions, including mid lane. I'm not going to have very specific knowledge about certain matchups because I just haven't played them. You know, so if it's something like Taliyah versus Vlad, I'm going to have a general idea about their item power spikes, but in terms of like super specific positioning knowledge and things like that, you know, I'm not going to have the same kind of knowledge as someone who's a challenger level player for that. But in terms of macro overall meta, I think I'm usually pretty on it in terms of overall strengths and weaknesses of certain champions and certain metas. Okay, so if you want to see my 7.24 patch notes, I've got that linked here. If you want to see the support tier list, I have that linked here as well. Just really quickly, and I don't think the numbers on this have changed. This is something that I did on my 7.17 in terms of gold efficiency and which items you should be getting. I'm not going to rehash this all the way. Check out that video if you want an in-depth analysis of that. But just really quickly, some of the core items are going to be Rod of the Ages, Morellonomicon, and Leandri's Torment that most people buy. And it's important to understand this because the champions that use these items best are going to be the strongest champions. In addition to that, one that I haven't added on here that's become very popular lately is Gunblade. So anything that can use Gunblade as a single item power spike is going to be pretty strong. So for example, Leblanc, she's probably the only Gunblade user mid that's common. I mean, obviously champions like Akali will use it as well, but LeBlanc's really the main one, and she's kind of an outlier. She's very strong, but the fact that she is, oh, Katarina as well, the fact that both of those hit like a massive power spike and get very far ahead as soon as they complete that one item, they're going to jump ahead of someone typically who has Rod of the Ages or Morellonomicon. So they're going to have, you know, a 5 to 10 minute window where they can just run all over those champions. So that item's also very, very good on a select few champions, and I didn't mention that one here. The reason it's so good on those two, on LeBlanc, she has just an all-in damage rotation. Like, she has to kill them when she does that. That's her whole trading pattern. And that also helps her do a little bit more damage to towers because it gives her the AD. On Katarina, it's extremely powerful because Katarina's passive, and we'll talk about this when we get to Katarina. Katarina's passive scales off of both AD and AP, and she's similar to LeBlanc where she wants to all-in kill somebody on one rotation. So it's particularly really, really strong on Katarina. But it just gives them one extra button they can press for damage, and then it just has some really nice synergy with their kits. Okay, but yeah, most of these champions will be using Rod of the Ages and Morellonomicon, and it's important to recognize that. Leandri's Torment is another one that's very powerful. Oftentimes, mid laners won't rush this. It'll be like a second or maybe third item, but it is also very good. Now, I've got the math for you here. You know, fully stacked Rod of the Ages is 151% efficient. This is 134% efficient Morellonomicon. Now, this takes a while to charge up. Morellonomicon also gives you CDR, which is very valuable, because it's really hard to get CDR as a mid laner, other than blue buff. Or maybe your runes on some of them if they go for the Transcendence, which is kind of... that's kind of rare depending on the champion that's playing it. But because you have to give up celerity to get that, but some people will get it. But anyways, Rod's very strong. It obviously takes some time to charge up, but once you do it, then you get about 4,000 gold for 2,700, so that's really good. It's a cheaper item, that's why it's super common on a lot of champions. Morello's the other one. It's really strong, and this gives you a faster power spike when you complete it. But down the line, the Rod's going to be a little bit better. Now, this doesn't give you defensive stats. It doesn't give you health, but it does give you the CDR, so that's pretty nice. And it also gives you Grievous Wounds, which is excellent against, you know, a lot of the lifesteal that's going on out there. So that's pretty good. It also builds from Lost Chapter, which is really, really nice mana sustain in lane. So Roanonomicon is the most common, and then Rod's also really good as like a first item buy. Leandri's is good, you know, kind of as a second or third item. And then Void Staff is also good as a second or third item. Niche item. So most champions will get these 4 items, or one of these, and then Leandri's plus Void Staff somewhere in their build. A lot of champions will. Banshee's Veil is another one that's pretty good. They nerfed this a while ago, but it's still 96% efficient. It's great in an AP versus AP matchup, particularly against hook champions. It's not as awesome against poke champions because they can just pop the bubble, but very, very good against Thresh, Blitz, Leona, a lot of those type of champions. So Banshees is another popular item you'll see. Zhonya is very good, especially against AD champions. But just keep in mind, these items, you know, usually they don't have a lot of mana on them. They don't have penetration. They don't give any extra additional damage or procs. The CDR is nice on these. Each one of them does give 10% CDR. I think Banshees does. I know that Hourglass does. Banshees does not give the CDR. So yeah, it's just ability power and magic resist. So that does give you a lot of resists. Oh, yeah, it does. I'm blind. It does give you the CDR. So each one of those does give you CDR. So Morellonomicon plus one of these items, either Zhonya's or Banshees plus blue buff, would give you 40% CDR. And then Lichbane is very good on certain champions that have repeatable abilities that are on a low cooldown. So you'll see a lot of champions with Lichbane. And then Gunblade, I talked about that as well. Very good on a select couple of champions, but it's kind of a niche item. Protobelt, there's a couple of champions that like this. Fizz, Echo, champions that want to close the gap. The melee casters, a lot of times, they like this, but it's rare. Okay, these are rookie trap items. I wouldn't get these items a ton. Rabadon's Death Cap is just too expensive for what it is. It's good as like a 6 item on some champions. Rylai's Crystal Scepter, I see way too many people rushing this too early, or people comment like, why don't I get this sometimes when I play AP supports? Remember that slows do not stack. It only offers a 20% slow, and anyone else that applies a slow, or if you have a slow in your kit, then this is going to be worthless. Okay, it doesn't have any mana management, doesn't have penetration, doesn't have active damage. It's only 94% efficient. You do get health, but health doesn't help you kill people, so it's okay. Primarily, you would get this on a champion that's going to have Leandri's first, and that also is not going to have any sort of other reliable slows in their kit. Okay, so the primary people who would get this would be someone like Malzahar, Taliyah, and Azir, because they don't have slows in their kit, and they're going to get Leandri's, and because Leandri's applies a slow, or because Rylai's applies a slow, then you get double damage off the Leandri's. So that's why. And this also helps them kite, and these two are kiter champions. Malzahar really likes it on his minions. That helps him stick to people a little bit more, and he doesn't have a reliable slow either outside of his ult. These are primarily the 3 champions you would see a Rylai's on, but you don't want to get it on a lot of champions. I had someone the other day telling me I needed to get that on Vel'Koz. I'm like, Vel'Koz's Q slows and his ultimate slows. And he's really long range, so you shouldn't be getting hit with stuff. I had some guy argue with me about that for like 15 minutes. It's like, buddy, I was trying to be as nice as I could. I'm like, man, he was trying to tell me that I shouldn't get something. I don't know. Anyways, I think a lot of people misunderstand Rylai's. So it's a niche item, and usually it only accompanies Leandri's. That's the only time you would get that, typically. Except on, like, Brand, who needs to hit a combo and doesn't have other slows. Maybe Brand early on, but I would still probably get Leandri's before I got Rylai's, even on Brand. Luden's Echo is okay in some situations. It's decent poke. It has very low base efficiency. Doesn't have penetration. It's a very expensive item. It's okay. GLP is very, very rare. Like, maybe on someone like Swain. You don't want that item typically. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the tier list here. I just wanted to recap just real quickly some of the items and why those define some of these picks. So champions that use those items that I talked about the best are going to be the best champions right now. Especially ones that use either Morello or Rod of the Ages are typically going to be the best. Okay, so key considerations. Anytime you're thinking about, is this champion likely to be good in the mid lane? These are questions you're going to ask. And these are going to be true for almost every patch. Okay, so does a champion have great wave clear? Very important mid lane. One of the strengths of mid lane is obviously you're in the middle of the map, so that means you have a lot of options in terms of roaming. And so in order to roam properly, I talk about rotation as another thing here, you need to be able to clear the waves. You need to be able to kill all the minions, get it into the enemy's tower, and then run to the side lane. Okay, so it's going to buy you time. It's going to make sure that their mid laner has to choose. Do they want to get that free gold under the tower, or do they want to try to follow you to a side lane? Okay, most of the time they just stay in the middle, and they just try to ping missing middle lane, and then the people bot lane or top lane don't pay attention to the missing ping, and then you show up, you get the kills, and then whoever you just killed rages at the mid laner for not rotating. That's usually how it goes down. So you want to make sure that you clear it, put it into their tower, and then go roam. Okay, so do they wave clear? Do they rotate well? Does the champion have reliable execution? And this is a way of saying, is it not too hard to play? And the thing to keep in mind is a lot of pros, like, just because you play a difficult champion does not mean you are a better player necessarily than other people. All right, because at the end of the day, it comes down to, do you take the enemy nexus? Okay, like, I guess better player is a subjective term. It doesn't mean you're going to win more games. Let me put it that way. Just because you play a champion that requires higher mechanical skill does not translate into winning more games at League of Legends. And really, when you're playing ranked, I guess it just depends on why. But if you really want to climb, if you really want to win, you need to focus on winning rather than looking flashy. Now, looking flashy is fun if you play just because, dang it, I like to look flashy, I like to make the big plays, I like to try to go for the pentakills. That's fine. But you can't have it both ways. You can't complain about not being able to climb and constantly play flashy champions that you make mistakes on, okay? Look at Crown. Crown from Korea, who played on Samsung Galaxy. Look at what he played in the finals. Malzahar. Every single game he played Malzahar, all right? I'm pretty sure. At least the first two. I don't remember if it was banned out the last game or not. He played a lot of Malzahar, and he played a lot of Malzahar throughout the entire tournament. Do you think he was sitting there feeling bad about it against Faker playing Malzahar? He's like, oh, I'm not playing a high skill cap champion against Faker. No, you know, I bet he was feeling great when he won the World Championship playing Malzahar. So, even pros, in fact, often pros will play champions that are reliable, and that's a nice way of saying simpler, okay? But you have to think of simplicity not as sort of what noobs do, but what smart players do to guarantee better results, okay? That means it's reliable. That means it's less likely you're going to mess it up. So when you're playing something that's reliable, that means you can focus your attention elsewhere. You can pay attention to the minimap more. You can pay attention to your CS and hit CS better. You're going to know what to do in situations. You're not going to miss skill shots as much. So you're just going to perform better in the game if you play reliable champions. Now, I do have some that are very strong that do have a higher skill cap down here, so they're not all, you know, Annie Malzahar type of stuff. But just in general, there's no shame in playing reliable champions. There's no shame in playing Annie, Malzahar, Sona, you know, Sejuani's pretty reliable. I guess she does have a skill shot in there, but Kassadin, there's no shame in playing these kinds of champions, okay? So at the end of the day, in ranked, if you're really trying to climb as far as you can, it's all about getting those W's, right? It's all about winning. So an important question to ask is this reliable? Or is there a higher probability that I could mess this up? Or not even that I could mess it up, that maybe my team's going to mess it up, or that maybe it just doesn't fit into a certain situation, right? So, someone like Thresh is a great example, and I've been playing Thresh a lot, and I do think he's fun, and I do think he's very powerful right now. But there are a lot of ways that things can go wrong when you're playing Thresh, for example, right? Like, you could miss the hook, you could land the hook, and then decide that you want to go in when you don't have proper vision, and then other people come out and kill you, counter gank you. Your allies could just not take your lantern. Or if you're playing something like, I'm trying to think, I don't have a lot of heart, like Malzahar, for example, and you flash ult, someone on the back line, and your team doesn't follow up, and the enemy team just collapses and kills you. That's a potential mistake, both for you and for your allies, because you're relying on your allies to go in. That's why a lot of these champions aren't really hard engaged champions for that reason, because you're not totally screwed over if your allies don't follow you up on a lot of these champions. But that is a consideration, is, am I going to mess it up, and is my team going to mess it up? Are they not going to do what my champion needs to do? Or like Bard is another example with support. If your team doesn't follow up when you ult somebody, or if they don't take your magical journey, or whatever, or like tanks feel this all the time. If you go in as, Alistar or something like that, and your team doesn't follow, you just die. So, does it have reliable execution? Are you going to play around it correctly? Is your team going to play around it correctly? And is it good in a bunch of different game situations? Does the champion offer heavy AP scaling damage? This is really important, especially right now in this meta. It's important to run AP in mid because a lot of people in top lane and jungle are running AD champions or tanks. So that's why it's important to have a lot of AP damage. Okay, because people just aren't running heavy AP damage in other roles. Like, occasionally you'll see an Akali top. You might see a Rumble top. You might see a Morgana jungle. She's not enough damage, I don't think. But in general, people are counting on mid lane to get heavy AP. So you can play things like Talon and Zed, and I do have Talon and Zed down here. But the issue is, if you run Talon, top lane runs Riven, you know, bot lane's running AD, and then your jungle is, you know, just like a tank that doesn't do a lot of damage, then the enemy team is just going to stack a bunch of armor. They're all going to stack Ninja Tai-Bai and just anything that has armor on it, and you're just never going to kill anybody. So that's why it's important to have AP damage from the mid lane role, I think, right now. It's really hard to itemize because a lot of people lost magic resist in their runes. So now a lot of people lost armor as well, but it's easier to itemize into armor most of the time. So a lot of people lost that magic resist. These champions are doing a lot more damage, especially during the laning phase. They basically got a free, like, 12 magic penetration. So that's part of what makes AP so good. And it's important to have that high scaling damage because tanks are coming back. And this is one of the biggest surprises for me. Sort of. Sort of, not really. I mean, I was talking about it a couple of patches ago. I've always thought tanks have been strong since 7.12 or whenever they buffed Thorn Mail and a bunch of other tank items. People just got tired of playing them at the end of the season. They just had tank fatigue. You know, they just didn't want to play tanks anymore. And now they've decided they're tired of losing, playing all of these unreliable champions. And, you know, they decided to stop playing the Yasuos and stop playing the whatever as much. And instead they're playing Maokai again. Instead they're playing Sejuani again. And so it's important that you have a champion that can help your AD carry cut through that crap. Because those things are really, really hard to kill right now. Especially with the buff to Sunfire. So now they did nerf Bramble Vest, which is a thing. But you have to have that damage in case your team doesn't have it. Like, if your team has a Fiora or, you know, a Shyvana, you might be able to cut through it. But this is why champions like Azir, who does really high sustained damage, or Anivia, Taliyah, Kassadin, even Malzahar does pretty high sustained damage later in the game with his minions. Especially once he gets Ryze, Leandries. But it's really hard to have that. And so this makes burst champions, they're still good. Champions like Syndra, but they just don't do as much sustained damage. So there are some champions that don't do high sustained damage that just have really nice burst damage. You know, champions like LeBlanc or maybe Zoe. But they have to have really strong other aspects of their kit to really make that work. So you want the sustained AP damage, if at all possible. And then, does the champion have strong objective control? So does it take towers quickly? Does it take dragons quickly? Does it, I mean, rotation's part of that as well. I talked about rotation up here. But, for example, Malzahar takes dragons really quickly. Azir takes dragons really quickly and barons really quickly. Because Malzahar has minions that help him out. Azir has his sand soldiers that help him out. So those are two strengths of those guys. Taliyah is pretty good against towers because she has so much zoning pressure off of the tower. So she's very good at sieging and defending against sieges. Kassadin's not that great at objectives. Like, Twisted Fate's another example who's awesome at taking towers. He has great wave clear. He gets Lich Bane, just like, you know, 3 shots towers near the end of the game. Very nice. So if it has objective control, if it takes towers or dragons quickly, that's a perk. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Let's talk about these champions here. Just really, I say really quickly. It's probably going to be a 45-minute video, but let's get in here. Okay, Taliyah. So, I think Taliyah is the #1 in solo queue most of the time, and the reason is she's just a perfect package of great mobility, great wave clear, really high sustained damage, really high burst damage. So there's very little wrong with her kit. So if you look at Taliyah, she has very few weaknesses. So even in bad matchups, she can still just wave clear and farm it out. Because she can operate from such a long distance away. Alphabetical order is difficult sometimes. But part of it is her passive allows her to move really quickly back to lane, you know, around level 6, 25%, so she can back and then get back to lane really quickly. That also helps her rotate. Even without her ultimate, she can still run up and down the river really quickly when she's near walls. So that's very, very powerful, that she basically gets 25% out of combat movement speed, if you want to think about it that way. I mean, hello. That's like she gets free Moby boots. So she's very quick, great on rotations, great after backs. And in Threaded Volley, look at these numbers on this thing. Once you get to level 9, if you hit people with all those rocks, it's 442 damage with a 117% AP ratio. It's like 600 damage on an ability that has a 3-second cooldown. At level 9, you know, when you have like 200 AP. Now, you may not have 200, but like 100 is doable, and that's 500 something. That's like between like 550 and 600 damage. That's crazy. Off of one item. Off of one ability, one item that has a 3-second cooldown and has 1,000 range. That outranges most other poke. That's crazy. And it wave clears really well. So it doesn't... yeah, it has no diminishing returns against waves. That's like almost instant wave clear. Now, it does create worked ground, so she can't do it in the same spot at the same time. And this is where some of the skill comes up, is you have to really learn how to stack these circles like really close to each other and then work around the circles. Because if you just throw one rock at them, it's okay. It's okay damage, right? Like, it's still going to do, you know, 170 damage, so it's all right. And you're going to get some refunds and stuff like that. But it's obviously not as good as getting the maximum damage. And she also gets extra bonus movement speed around this. Now, this is even in combat, right? So even in combat, she's going to get 15% extra movement speed. So once again, allows her to reposition, allows her to kite very well. It's just great. So that's a really, really powerful ability. Now, Seismic Shove is another one that has great utility to it. So you can use this to engage from 900 away. So you can knock the enemy back into you. So that's not only just like a stun, but it actually displaces them, pulls them towards your team, which is great. So you can use it to engage like that, or you can use it to disengage. So if someone's trying to gank you, you can knock them away. Or if someone's about to kill your AD carry and try to dive them, you can knock them away. So it has great utility. It can either engage or it can disengage, and it can combo with Unraveled Earth, which we'll talk about right now. So just really good utility, one-point wonder type of skill. Okay? And then we have this. So this throws out a slow, which is nice. 20% slow, because she's going to get Leandries. Usually she'll get Ryze at some point. I believe her build is... I don't know if she goes Morello or Rod. I would imagine she probably goes Morello, Leandries, Ryze. And the reason for the Ryze is the Q, it will hold people in place. You can hit them with all of your stones. Obviously, her E does apply a slow, but it's a shorter range than the Q. Yeah. Morello, Leandry, Ryze, Void. Yeah. Okay. I would max the Q too. This is saying like the highest win rate is this. That's goofy. And then Airy, I think. I mean, you could go Comet as well. I would probably like Comet. And then, yeah, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch. Pretty common. And it just depends on the lane. Taste of Blood can give you a little bit of extra sustain in lane if you need it. I would probably go Triumph. That thing is still busted. It's really good. And then Coup de Grace, help you get some execution damage in there. I mean, you could also go into Inspiration if you want to. Let's see what some of the pros are doing here. Then you can go into Inspiration if you want like some free boots and biscuits in a tough lane. It looks like what a lot of other people are doing. Phase Rush is another option. Remember that will help you run people down, and they did just buff Phase Rush. But the problem with Phase Rush is it has a really low starting base, and that's what kind of sucks. Like the old, I'm blanking on what it was called. The Surge, whatever the thing was called, used to give you 40% movement speed if you did like 40% of their health or something like that. And that was from level 1. It would give you 40% movement speed. But the problem with this new one, Phase Rush, is that it starts at 15%, which is just garbage. So yeah, it does give her the slow resist now, if you hit them with 3 different abilities, but it's only 15% move speed, so it's okay. It's okay, but she's already pretty safe. She already kites pretty well. I would probably just go with Comet. But I would say a lot of people, a lot of high-end people are probably going for like Boots Biscuit, would be my guess, or Boots and the 5% CDR, but I would say like Boots Biscuit would be... Oh, well, she's going stopwatch. I really don't like getting stopwatch that early. I mean, I guess you can sell it later, but... yeah, that's what I would go. Boots Biscuit. So yeah, I mean, you can go the Boots Biscuit route if you want. I would probably prefer that. The boots are just so good. It's like 400 gold worth of an item. You get 300 gold for the boots. Once you get it, it's 50 gold off, and then you get an extra, like, 10 move speed. So the 10 move speed, I calculated it up before, it's worth somewhere between like 400 and 450 gold. So that's really, really nice, just gold efficiency. And then the biscuits are just great at getting through lanes, right? So it's just like you get an extra however many 4 or 5 potions. That's like, you know, between 200 and 300 gold value. And they're really nice potions too, because it includes mana and health. So it just helps get you through some tough lanes. So I would strongly consider going Boots Biscuit on her, but you know, you can go for the coup de grace if you want. But yeah, I would definitely go Comet, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch. Okay, so yeah, very good. Roam's really nice. Has those boulders you can knock people into. I forgot to mention that, but basically, yeah, they do really heavy damage, or pretty heavy damage, I should say, if you knock people back into them. And it slows them so they can't run out. And then, of course, you have your ultimate, which allows you to not only roam to side lanes, but especially against immobile champions that don't have dashes without flash. Misfortune, Jhin, Varus, very, very popular AD carries right now that do not have a blink ability. And then most supports also don't have a blink ability. So if you're thinking about, like, Leona, Blitz, Janna, a lot of these champions cannot get over that wall. So when you go mid lane and you drop that wall on them, if they don't have flash, if the bot lane pings that flash is missing or whatever, those are free kills. You put that earth on them. Usually you don't even have to show up. If you just put that on them, then they're probably going to die. So it has great utility. It cuts people off, especially now that people are playing less Lucian, less Tristana, less Ezreal. Ezreal's still banned all the time. You know, these are champions that can dash and get around that wall pretty easily. But Misfortune, Jhin, Varus, they cannot do it. So that's really important to recognize that this is really, really good right now in the meta, is this Weaver's Wall. So, yeah, you cut people off and you just roll up and murder them. So, she has great roaming anyways without her ult because she's really fast. And when she does have her ult, it's extremely good roaming and basically makes it impossible for a lot of champions to get out. You can also zone people off of towers with this. You can trap people in a Baron pit if you want to. So if you roll up on them and your team's about to just roll up, just trap them in the pit and then just sling all your rocks at them and just get your Twitch to go to town on them, or your Varus just to go to town on them, or Misfortune to ult them. Like, just imagine rolling up, they're trying to sneak a Baron or something, it's at 50% health, you Weavers wall them in, and then Misfortune just ults him in the pit, and then you just start throwing all these Qs at him. I mean, it has so much great utility. Very, very good. So she has a lot of utility to her. She has burst damage, she has sustained damage, she has really high roaming, really good utility with her ult, good utility with Seismic Shove. She's just the perfect solo queue warrior. She's really, really good. She scales very hard. She has pretty good damage early on. Great itemization. She is what people, if they're boosting or they're doing like so many games to Challenger, it's very, very popular to run this champion. Okay, Kassadin's another one. Super overpowered right now. He could be a couple of slots lower depending. Like, Kassadin's big issue is he doesn't have wave clear, and that is a very big issue. But other than that, he's very, very good. So Kassadin, the reason why Kassadin is really strong is he has great mobility, he has great assassination, and he has great defense. And he has just unreal scaling. So what makes Kassadin good against a lot of these other champions is he gets a free 15% reduced magic damage, and he gets this shield, which is 160 plus 30% of your AP. So if you have 200 AP, you get a 220 shield, which is really, really good. Now, don't forget that shield scales with magic resist as well. So, you know, his magic resist is going to be like 30 or 40, so... you know, that means it's going to block like 300 damage every time he Qs. So it's not only that he does decent damage off of his Q, but he also blocks a lot of damage. And he itemizes into Rod of the Ages, which gives him even more health. So he's one of the tankiest assassins. Now, it doesn't mean you just go in and face tank like 5 people, but in these trades against other assassins, like someone like a Katarina or someone like a, you know, a Diana or something like that, a lot of times he'll have an edge. Now, Diana does get shields too, but that's part of what makes him really, really oppressive against other people. And when he walks up and trades in lane, he just presses Q on you. He does his damage, unless you hit him immediately before that Q hits. Then he gets that free shield to block some of your damage. So that's just really oppressive. And the thing to notice here is all 4 of his abilities are damage abilities. 3 of them have a 0.7 AP ratio, which is massive. And they're fairly low cooldowns. Like it's 9 seconds, 7 seconds, 5 seconds. And he's very mobile, so he gets a free flash every now and then that also does damage and does damage based on your maximum mana. And then once he gets his Lich Bane, then he has an extra AP ratio as well. So once he gets Rod, he's pretty strong. Once he gets Rod plus Lich Bane, he becomes very, very difficult to stop. And a big part of why he's strong as well is presence of mind. Now, they just buffed this as well, and I just did a Kassadin video, so check it out. It's going to be a coaching video. It's going to be on the channel by the time I release this. I don't know why this is not loading correctly. Okay, there we go. But if we look at presence of mind, they just buffed it. It's 7 seconds. 100%, you get 100% mana refund for 7 seconds whenever you get a takedown or level up. A takedown is defined as a kill or an assist. So if you just touch somebody and they die in a fight, you get this 7 seconds. And the big issue with that is Kassadin is balanced around not being able to use his Rift Walk a lot because it costs too much mana. Okay, so once he Rift Walks 4 times, it's going to cost 800 mana. Now, someone was confused about this on the channel, and someone, when I talked about this before, they're like, but when you Rift Walk the 5th time, it goes to 1600 mana, and he's not going to have enough mana to do that. No, it doesn't. It always stays at 400. That's why it says the 5th plus time that he does it. Okay, so he can stack it up to 4 times. All right, so it never goes any higher. If you do this 20 times, it'll still be 800 mana. Okay, but all of that gets refunded. Okay, and at level 16, it's a 2-second cooldown. So the cooldown never goes up, it's just the mana. So if you have basically infinite mana, you have to have 800 mana. If you don't have 800, then you can't do it. It only refunds the amount that you had. But 2 seconds, and you're going to do 360 damage with a 0.7 ratio. So that's going to be, you know, minimum 500, 6% of your max mana. It's going to be like between, you know, like 650 and 700 damage every time you do this on a 2-second cooldown that's also a flash, where you can go in and out of a fight. And it lasts for 7 seconds. And there's no internal cooldown. There is no cooldown on this. It's not 20-second cooldown, 45-second cooldown, like a lot of other stuff. That's 0 cooldown. So if you, let's say you, you know, team fight starts, you go in, you touch somebody, either you kill them or somebody else kills them. Okay, you got 7 seconds. All right, now your team's up 5v4. Okay, you're still fighting. You kill another person like 5 seconds later. Resets. New 7 seconds worth of free mana. Now they're trying to run because, you know, it's a 5v3 or a 4v3 at this point, and a lot of them are probably low. You chase down another person because you have a flash every 2 seconds, right? So you chase down another person, kill them after 3 seconds. You get a fresh 7 seconds, and so on and so forth. So as long as you keep killing or getting an assist every 7 seconds, you get to use all of your spells for free, including your 800 mana cost ult. And that's part of what makes him overpowered right now. I mean, he would be really strong without this, but this is just over the top. And it's not even a keystone. It's just a secondary rune. So you just run down, you just grab, you know, Comet, either Ult Hat or Mana Flow Band, or if you're against a really hard lane like an Annie, you could get a Nullifying Orb, Celerity, Scorch, and then over here, just pick up Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace is awesome as well. Gives you an extra 15 ability power whenever you get a kill or an assist, and you do 9% extra damage at champions below 40% health. Excellent for Kassadin. So he doesn't have to go out of his way at all to pick this up. It's basically free because that's really good anyways. So that's just absurdly powerful right now. So he scales, he has super high damage, he's very good against other AP supports, he has excellent roaming. Just really strong abuse of the runes right now. The only thing that he lacks is wave clear, and he doesn't like take barons or dragons very quickly. But he's very good against most other champions on this list for these reasons. If you don't hold him down early, he will take over the game by himself. He is terrifying. If I like Kassadin is the thing, he's the scariest thing to see mid lane on the other team. I'll tell you that right now, because he's a monkey champion too, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's reliable, like I said before. That's a polite way of saying it. He's reliable, but anybody can play this champion. Like I failed on him. I know I said that, and I failed really hard trying him the other night for fun in a normals game on viewers night. But you know, I was playing really awful, and our team was behind and all that stuff. But like someone who you know, practices him and knows what's going on, he's really easy to play because there's no skill shots to him. Like you just press Q on him, you dash in, you press E, that's it. So he's super easy to play. He's very forgiving. You know, you can push up too far in lane, you get a free flash to get away. He has that innate tankiness to him. So that's the scariest thing about him, is the other person doesn't even have to be like that great of a player. Like it's very unlikely they're going to make mechanical mistakes because there just aren't a lot of mechanical things about him. Whereas if I see a Taliyah or an Azir or something on the enemy team, I'll be like, man, that's pretty good. But they could definitely mess that up, right? They could mess up their wall. The Taliyah could just not really know how to manage the earth properly. She could just miss her Qs. She could miss all of her skill shots, right? With Azir, you know, there are a ton of ways to mess up Azir. You can't really mess up Kassadin. Like, it's hard. You have to really be having a bad game to mess up Kassadin. And so, even if you hold him down early, he's still gonna be very relevant later. I've had Kassadins go like 0-4 in lane and end the game like 12-5, completely take over. So he is very, very abusive right now. And that's why he's one of my top 3 ban champions. I think you have to ban Ezreal, Jarvan, and Kassadin right now. I mean, Misfortune's up there too. But yeah, he's just a very simple monkey champion. You can just roll your hand across the keyboard probably late game once you get 2 or 3 items and just slaughter people. So that's why he's really, really high. I just don't quite have him as high as Taliyah because he's not the total package if you're a good player. You know, if it's like 2 challengers playing, I think Taliyah is going to be better than Kassadin most of the time. But, you know, if it's 2 silvers playing or 2 bronzes playing, I would probably favor Kassadin. But, you know, they're both up there. It's number 1 and number 1A in my mind. Number 3A, who's also very good right now, is Malzahar. So if you look at Malz, really quickly, and we need to move on. I don't want this to be, like, it's already getting to be pretty long. But I haven't done one in a while, so I do want to be thorough. I do want to get over to the stream at some point. Malzahar just got a pretty hefty nerf to his ult. He got a lot of damage taken off of it at later levels. At earlier levels, it's the same. So I still think he's really good, and he's very similar to Taliyah. He's shorter range, so that's an issue. But he does have the safety. You know, he's got this shield, which is very good against hooks. You know, it's great against Thresh, great against Blitz, great against Leona, and all those champions are very popular right now. So he's very, very good against that. He has okay damage. You know, he has nice ratios once he gets up there. I mean, he's got a 0.8 here. His minions kind of suck. I mean, they nerfed the minions a long time ago, but his E has a really nice ratio on it. His Q has a good ratio, and then his ult has a pretty good ratio. So it's the same damage early, but it's a lot less later. So yeah, he's not going to be able to one-shot people later, but that's not really what he's designed to do. He's designed to hold people down so that his team can kill them. So anytime you have a lockdown 2.5 second suppress, which cannot be Mikhail's, it cannot be cleansed, they have to have Quicksilver Sash, which a lot of AP champions are not going to run Quicksilver Sash. So, you know, he's very good at... he's very good at killing AP champions if he gets a hold of him. His ranges are lower. That's only 700 range. That's 650. You know, that's 900. But he does have utility. He has the silence. He obviously has this lockdown. He has really nice damage scaling. He has really nice objective control. Those minions, if you didn't know that, Baron will hit the minions if they're the closest thing. So that's 3 free Baron hits whenever you spawn these swarms. And the same thing with the dragon. So, you know, he actually can tank Dragon and Baron really well, and they do pretty nice damage. Especially once you get the Rylai's Leandre's combo. So, all of that makes him really strong. The Malefic Visions, and this is deceptive, like, total magic damage. So remember, this gets reset. And that's important to recognize when you put this on somebody. So if you put Malefic Visions on somebody, and then, you know, you put the Malefic Visions on them, you summon your minions, and then you ult them, this gets reset whenever you ult them. Okay, so you get the, you know, maybe like 2 seconds, then you ult them, you get another 4 seconds, that's 6 seconds, and then if you hit them with a Q after that, after you're done, that resets it again. So you could get easily up to 8 seconds, if not more. I mean, you could get up to 12, but realistically, getting to 8 is not that hard. So that's double damage, you know? That's 440 damage off of this ability. So it's a lot more than it appears because you can reset it with your Q and your R. So he's just very, very good, and he has great wave clear. I mean, you just drop your E on a wave, drop a couple of minions on it, and just walk away, and it's going to clear the wave. Now, you're not, you won't get the experience, but you will get the gold. So you can just, like, instantly clear this wave. And then whenever the E kills a minion, or whenever a minion dies, while the E's on him, then it gives you 2% of your max mana. So you could get 12% of your max mana when you clear a wave. Really nice. So yeah, very, very good. I'm pretty sure he buys Morello, Leandri, Ryze. Yeah. Yep, same thing basically as Taliyah. So very, very strong. Great lockdown, great CC, great crowd control. Pretty good roaming. He's not as fast as someone like Taliyah on the roam, but because he can push so easily and he has that great lockdown crowd control, it's on a low cooldown, you can definitely roam and make really big plays. So awesome. And he has really nice objective control. Okay, so these three are definitely extremely powerful. Azir's another one who's risen to prominence lately. Now, Azir is much harder to play than the previous three. But he's very good right now. And there are several builds you can build with him. I think the primary way to abuse Azir and why he's stronger is his interaction with Comet. I have a friend of mine who's a very good Azir player, and he's been using Lethal Tempo. And that's what a lot of people have used. So this is actually pretty good on him too. It gives him a lot of attack speed. But from what I understand with Comet, every time your soldier hits somebody, it lowers the cooldown on Comet. So you could get even longer cooldown with that. But, you know, the more I think about it, the more my friend was talking about this last night when I went over there and did a booster draft with him for Magic. He's an Azir one-trick and loves this build. It's Lethal Tempo, and then you get the Legend Alacrity, which gives you extra attack speed. Because remember, like, Azir's true damage comes off of his attack speed. Because he gets these soldiers out. If we look at the soldiers here, he gets the soldiers out, and yes, they do have a 0.6 ratio, but most of their power comes from your attack speed. So every time you attack, they deal more damage. So if you get 20% extra attack speed, that's basically 20% extra damage on these. Okay, so if you could have an ability or an item that gives you, you know, 50% attack speed, that's going to be 50% extra damage on this, and that's going to be a lot stronger than some, like, so if you are at, you know, level 10, and this does 100 per swing, it's effectively would be doing 150 if you had 50% attack speed. And that gets much higher as the game goes on and as the soldiers level up. So AP obviously scales really well on him, but attack speed scales extremely well on him also. The problem with that is there aren't very many AP attack speed items. Nashor's Tooth. It's pretty much it. You can go Gensu's Rageblade, but he doesn't really want AD because AD doesn't apply to his soldiers at all, and he doesn't auto-attack that much. So he really, really wants attack speed. It's just historically has been very difficult to itemize for that outside of Nashor's Tooth. But now you can, right? Because you have Lethal Tempo and you have Alacrity. So yeah, so now he gets massive attack speed off of that and Alacrity. Now this gives him attack speed too, and he gets the Ryze here. So so that's part of why he's really strong. So his soldiers do a ton of sustained damage. Especially, you know, once they level up here. He has pretty good mobility. He can move with his E to the Conquering Sands. He gets a little shield, which is nice if you collide with somebody. Now, usually you don't want to be using this to go in and hit people, but sometimes in an all-in situation you might want to do it. And then his Emperor Divide has really great, you know, combinations you can do with it. Obviously, the cool thing is if you slide in behind the enemy and then push them towards you, that's what everybody loves to do. That's fun, but I would say most of the time, especially in kind of this tank meta, you just want to push people off of you, keep that range, and then just slam them with your soldiers. Just keep crushing them with those soldiers. So that's going to be something that's really popular among a lot of these champions that I have at the top, is they have, like Taliyah has this, Azir has this, Anivia has this. It's a way to zone and to keep people off of you, so to kite tanks and just push them away from your team to help zone control areas while you do heavy sustained damage. That's, I think, how people should use Azir most of the time. It's just when someone gets in your face or they're trying to dive your AD carry, you can get over there, push them back, and just give your AD carry some breathing room so they can auto-attack those tanks. Then you can attack the tanks down as well. And so I think going like Nashor's Tooth, Leandri's, Ryze would probably be what I would guess. Would be the really strong combo here. This, yes. Now, some people have been playing around with Morellonomicon. I don't think he has that much mana problems. I haven't played Azir a lot, but Morello, like, you don't need the flat mana. You don't need the mana regen. The CDR is nice, but you get the CDR on Nashor's. If you don't know what Nashor's Tooth is, I'll click it here real quick. So it's 3,000 gold, 80 ability power, 50% attack speed, 20% cooldown. It's awesome. Now, the 15 on-hit magic damage does not apply to your soldiers. The soldiers do not apply on hit. So that doesn't really matter that much. But these raw stats are just such a good bargain. I mean, look at that bargain. 4,200 gold value. Now, that includes this, which, you know, is not going to happen that often. But this stuff right here is pretty good. So it's just really, really good on Azir because it's the one item that ability power, attack speed, CDR, perfect. Doesn't have AD, doesn't have any other wasted stats on it other than kind of the passive. So I think that's really nice on him. Now keep in mind that it doesn't apply on hit, but it does apply spell effects. So the soldiers do apply the slow off of Ryze, and because it applies the slow, it also applies the Leandri's, and that's why these two are particularly powerful. Also, the kiting that I just mentioned before, his playstyle, you want to get people off of you, kite them, and then just keep your soldiers just hammering them, just machine gunning them down. So you're basically like an AD carry, like a magical AD carry with your sand soldiers. So I think that's why he's really good right now, is he abuses those runes very well, and the itemization is very strong on him right now, particularly against sort of the tanks, which are coming back into play. Now, he's not rated that highly, right? His win rate's lower, but that's because he's really difficult to play correctly. But I think he's super strong right now. Zoe's another one who's really strong. Oh, God, it's going to be longer than I expected. I'll just spend a lot of time on the top two, and then I'll just mention these just really briefly, and we'll move on. But Zoe's really strong. You have to hit the bubbles. You have to be able to hit the Qs with her. She doesn't have escapes, really. I mean, she can, like, ult, but you're going to go back to the same position, and people are going to know that, and they're going to kill you. So that's a major problem with Zoe, and that's why I don't have her. I know people are like, why isn't Zoe, like, in the S class? Well, that's why. First of all, she has a really high skill cap. She's very, very dependent on people hitting the Sleepy Trouble bubble, and she doesn't have escapes. So if she gets ganked or she gets out of position, she's going to die. She doesn't have any sort of escapes. And, you know, this is pretty long range. It's 800. Now, it does go more if you go over walls. So, you know, she can do quite a lot of damage. It is fun with the Spell Thieves to grab abilities, and she can, you know, pretty much one-shot people, you know, once she gets the Sleepy Trouble bubble. They do take some basic damage here. And then, what is it? They take like 100% extra damage or something, right? Oh, bonus true damage. Champion takes damage by the sleeping. The target deals bonus true damage equal to the post mitigation damage. Okay, so after mitigation, capped at Sleepy Bubble Trouble's damage. So basically you can get double the damage. Okay. So up to 220. Okay, so you can do 400 damage, 220 of which is true damage when you hit them. Okay, so that's basically like 600 something damage, and then this does just, yeah, I mean, it's basically one-shot territory when you get them. So that's the whole thing, is can you hit the bubble and then pin together this true shot damage. Now, especially against tanks, she's not going to be that great against tanks, especially against tanks. Those tanks can body block these Qs. Now, yeah, it's going to hurt, but, you know, if you Sleepy Bubble Trouble, the squishy 80 carry, then there's 2.2 seconds for a tank to walk up and body block that. And people are going to start figuring that out, that you can body block. And it's still going to do damage, but it's not going to do nearly as much as the Sleepy person, because it's not going to activate that true damage. So you have to hit this, and you have to hope they don't have a tank that's going to body block for them. Or that they aren't, like, behind minions, or that they can't, like, dash, you know, away from you. So she is good. She does do a ton of burst damage, but she doesn't have escape. She's not mobile. She has very low wave clear. This Q can wave clear. She has no objective control. Her roaming is pretty weak. She's not very fast on the roams. So yes, she does a lot of damage. Yes, she has a bag of tricks, you know, with her spell thieves, and she can, you know, dance around and hit people with stuff. She has a ton of fun. She's pretty strong, but, you know, I just feel like there are going to be other champions that are also going to be pretty strong. Like, I just feel like she's just not as reliable as Taliyah, like these people up here. So she is very good. I did rank her very highly, but she's just not as mobile, doesn't have quite as much utility as these people do. And like, at least fairly reliant on the enemy, like, not body blocking those Qs. Okay. Twisted Fate is another one. I rate him very highly. A lot of people will not put in this highly, but Twisted Fate is just a quintessential, you know, really strong mid lane champion. And the reason for that is he's kind of like Taliyah, just not quite as good. That's why he's down here. But if Taliyah's banned, Taliyah's very rarely banned, or if she gets nerfed out too hard out of the meta, then Twisted Fate can take over. So he's a pretty simple champion, but the philosophy is the winning formula for solo queue: push, roam, crowd control, objective control. You win. Now, he does have some harder matchups because he has to get a little bit closer to hit his stun. But he is quite, you know, he is quite strong. So he does wave clear. This doesn't have diminishing returns against minions. So really strong wave clear. 2-second stun on the gold card once you level it up. Stack deck is kind of whatever. It doesn't matter most of the time. It's a little bit of extra damage. And then the Destiny, of course, allows you to roam and make plays around the map. So he's one of the best roamers. The difference here is Taliyah's wall has other utility other than just warping in on top of people. Like I said, it blocks off especially a lot of immobile champions, to where if they don't have flash, they're dead. If you block off, you know, Soraka, Varus, or something bot lane, and then ride down there with Taliyah, they're probably not getting out. If you ult behind them, it might have the same effect, but it's just not quite as damning. You can't box people into Baron Pit. You can't zone them off of towers. So this just doesn't have quite the same level. Now, he's going to get down there faster than she is. So there's that. But I just feel like Taliyah is just a better version of Twisted Fate right now. But he's still really, really good. He does take towers faster than she does. And he does have a 2-second stun, which is nice. Now, she has a lot more zone control than he does, because she can drop the rocks to slow people, and she can knock people back with her boulder. And she has longer range on her harass and just higher damage output overall. But he does have the stun, and he does take towers really quickly because of his Lich Bane procs. And he does get a lot of extra gold. So you're probably not going to be seeing him in pro play, but he's very, very good in solo queue with the push roam style. He's just really good. Just look up Apto if you want to know how to play it, how to do this correctly. APDO. He's the best Korean solo queue player, and he pretty much always, from what I understand, he almost always, if he's really hardcore about climbing, will play Taliyah and Twisted Fate. Okay, so Twisted Fate, very good. Outshined by Taliyah most of the time, but nevertheless, strong champion. Katarina's another one who's super strong right now, and a lot of it has to do with itemization and runes. So, Electrocute is disgusting on her, and the reason is she gets Gunblade. So this is 50% of your bonus AD and 30% of your AP. So Gunblade gives you 80 AP and 40 AD. So all of those stats are so good for this item. And then, of course, you know, it does have the high burst damage, and it's adaptive, and it gives you an extra an extra active, right, off of the Gunblade. Now, is that active? I think the active just scales with AP. Yeah, that just scales with AP. But it does apply a slow, which is really nice, so that they don't run out of your ultimate as fast. And that can also help you escape as well if you're kind of in trouble. And then it adds the healing, which is nice. Gives you some sustain off the lane. So, you know, just the fact that she can rush Gunblade, hit a power spike faster than people who are going for Rod of the Ages or Morellonomicon. She's going to be a lot bigger once she completes this item, particularly with Electrocute Rune. And if we look at her specifically, that works very well with her her passive as well, which has an AD and an AP ratio. Okay, so a lot of her abilities, her Shunpo, her ult, and her her passive all have AD and AP ratios. That's why she's so incredibly strong once she completes Gunblade, because it just sends the Electrocute through the roof. It adds an extra active to her damage rotation, and it does a ton of extra damage to on her passive and on her other abilities. It's just like an insane power spike when she gets that item. So if you're against a Katarina, you need to watch out when she gets that. Now, I'm not a Katarina expert, but I can tell you that she does massive damage. She has really great mobility when she's chasing people. It's hard to get away from her because she keeps getting more and more Shunpo action. And I imagine she probably goes Gunblade, Leandri's Ryze. Because the Leandri's would add in the extra penetration, and that would give her extra slow damage that she can apply to everybody. I mean, she likes Hourglass, too. Yeah. Basically this. Now, some people will get Hourglass. I think this is good, too. Also, she has to get in there and, you know, get into the action. So having that extra health is actually nice because she's a very close-range champion. So it is pretty good. Now, she can get bullied out really hard in lane. There are some things you can get. You can get Taste of Blood. Sudden Impact is also extremely good on her because that gives her extra magic penetration. So you can get Ravenous Hunter to give you the extra... I guess you wouldn't want Taste of Blood, which is in the same tree here, which gives you a little bit of extra sustain in lane. But Ravenous Hunter will give you the sustain. Once you complete your Gunblade, that gives you sustain. And then something like Eyeball Collection really helps you out there. Yeah, and then Triumph, I think, is definitely what you want. So you get a little bit of health after you get kills. And then Coup de Grace to make sure you get those kills. So yeah, lots of sustained damage, really high single item power spike. If you're really, she's extremely hard to play, but if you do play her correctly, she can snowball very, very hard in a game. She's excellent to pick if your team has a lot of crowd control and a lot of initiation, because obviously she can't do that. But if someone on your team gets the enemy team kind of low to like half health or something, she can go in and do her thing and just completely wipe out an enemy team. So she takes a lot of practice, but she's very strong right now because of the Gunblade interaction with a lot of the other runes, most notably Electrocute, but then things like the healing, Triumph, Ravenous Hunter, Sudden Impact, all of these are very good. Coup de Grace, she synergizes very, very well with the runes, and then Gunblade is still just an awesome power spike on her that allows her to... So she sucks until she gets Gunblade a lot of times. Like, once she gets 6 and once she gets Gunblade, then she takes off. But before that, it's really, really difficult. Even harder than someone like Kassadin, because Kassadin at least itemizes into health earlier, and he has that shield to help save him in lane. And he gets a Catalyst. So she just doesn't get anything defensive early. So if you're against a really tough poke lane or harass lane early, that could be a problem. But if you have something that's going to give you a relatively free lane... you know, if you're against like a Morgana or you're against a like a Lux or something like that, that's just not going to pressure you too hard. She's excellent. Okay, Leblanc, another really high skill cap. So she could be, I mean, if you're like a challenger level Katarina player, you know, like Cat Evolved or whoever that guy is that has a YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, maybe she's #1 for that guy, but just in general, she's really risky and she has a really tough laning phase. But if you get ahead, she snowballs really hard. So that's why she's a bit lower than these. These are just safer into most matchups. But she is really good. LeBlanc is another one who is really high skill cap that can also take over the game. And that's a similar sort of power spike profile. Once she gets that Gunblade, you're going to spike a lot harder than someone who gets Morellonomicon or Rod of the Ages, and so you can really take off to the races. Now, LeBlanc also has kind of a problem early on. However, she does have more kill threat with if the jungler comes, because if she lands that chain, she at least has that as crowd control. And she's a bit safer because she can jump away with her W anytime she wants. Cat has a much harder time jumping away because like her mobility is predicated on jumping on daggers, and she can't just throw a dagger, you know, away, right? So she has to, unless she preps and leaves a dagger just sitting there when she goes up, then she can maybe get away. But it's just, she's a lot less safe than LeBlanc is. LeBlanc is still pretty safe as long as you don't W in early. Now, LeBlanc has been nerfed several times, but she has really high scaling. I mean, an 80% ratio on her passive, Sigil of Malice, has the crowd control at the chains. You can even double chain people for just an insane amount of crowd control and damage. I'm not going to go into everything. There are specialists like YouTubers that can tell you about LeBlanc probably. She's very, very difficult to play, and I'm just not an expert in her, so that's just all there is to it. But there are a lot of tricks you can do with her. You can mimic any of these abilities. So you can get away really quickly. You can double jump to somebody and crush someone who, you know, is like a full screen length away, and you just need to hit a, you know, a Q on them to run them down. She can double jump, Q them. She can double chain to double stun. She can double Shatter Orb. A lot of things she can do. And she has pretty decent wave clear. Cat has good wave clear. She's like in the open, right? If no one's contesting her. But LeBlanc, and she's just very safe. That's one difference from Katarina later on, is that, you know, you're just kind of, you're almost like a poke champion. Like you dive in, you mess with them, they get low, and then you can dive in again and finish them off. But you get to hang out in the back and sort of choose your fights a lot more than Katarina. Okay. Katarina, you're basically all in or nothing with Cat. Like when you go in, you're in. With LeBlanc, you can kind of go in and just sort of weave your way, sort of dance in and out of the fight, and just sort of pick your battles a little bit better. So they're both very difficult to play. Katarina has higher, like, raw team fight, just massive damage output than LeBlanc does. But LeBlanc still has massive single target burst on a pretty low cooldown. And she's just a bit safer and has a bit more mobility. So LeBlanc's still very, very strong, especially if you get good with her. But she's one of the hardest champions in the game to play, especially ranged champions. So she's up there. Once again, if you're a Grandmaster LeBlanc player, if you're like Faker or something, maybe she's up in tier 1. But for us mortals that are platinum and lower, she requires a lot of practice to be good with her. But definitely rewarding, definitely worth putting the time in if you get very good with her. And historically, you know, she's almost always been a really strong solo queue champion with a very high skill cap, though. Okay, Xerath is a newcomer. I think Xerath is very oppressive and very strong right now, and I had been kind of skeptical about it. I was like, sort of whatever. But there are a few things going on with Xerath that make him really strong. And he's not going to have a high win percentage because, just like a lot of his other champions, he's very high skill cap. Every single ability that he has is a skill shot, and you really have to land them consistently in order to make him effective. If you're missing a lot of his stuff, you're just not going to do that much. But there are a few things going on. First of all, Mana Flow Band is very, very strong on him. It gives him extra mana early, and Comet is also very good. So that allows him to have a little bit more poke. But it's really this right here, this Mana Flow Band, and then, of course, poke champions that use Scorch plus Comet are both very strong, and Transcendence does give him a bit of extra CDR. So the Mana Flow Band really helps out his early game mana problems. I guess he gets Morello. Yeah, Morello. Yeah, probably. I mean, this is actually pretty good. It gives him move speed. And because he has such long range poke, then he can actually proc that a lot. And so this is one of the few people where I think Ludens is actually really good. So you could go something like Morello Ludens. I do think that, and I always wondered why I didn't see more people going this. I do think that getting something like Ryze plus Leandries is actually quite good, because that'll, if you hit someone with your first ult shot, it's going to slow them by 20% and make sure that you hit them with the rest of your shots. So I think this could be pretty good. Now, the HP is kind of wasted because you should be so far in the back that you don't get hit with stuff. But I'm not a Grandmaster. You know, you want to start with Morellos, probably Ludens after that, and then you can just kind of feel it out. It might be better just to go Void Staff after that. But certainly the Ryze plus Leandries is interesting. It's interesting. But the thing to note about Xerath is his Q has excellent wave clear on it, has a ton of range. Scorch is really strong on him because you can consistently apply that extra 30 damage early. You get the extra mana back from Mana Flow Band, which is really strong. And this applies down a line to every single minion. There are no diminishing returns on this. You can, after you get an item or two, you can almost one-shot a minion wave with him, which is obviously really good. Now, as far as roaming, you can't physically get down there that fast. He's not a very fast champion, but you have such a far distance that you can use your ultimate and throw your shots down there to influence fights from just about half a map away. And it's on a low cooldown. So a lot of these semi-global things like TF, Taliyah, a lot of this stuff, Karthus, they're going to have like a 3-minute cooldown. Corki package, they're going to usually have around 180-second cooldown. This is only 130 seconds. So you can influence other places on the map by a very, very long distance that's, you know, going to be much, much shorter cooldown, like a 1/3 less cooldown than a lot of other champions. So, you know, that's really strong. So you could get up to, in theory, 1,400 damage with a 250% ratio. So, and this is really high team fight and sustained damage. Most of his abilities are multi-hit threats. So Arcano Pulse can hit multiple people in a team fight. Eye of Destruction, multiple people. Arcane, this technically could hit multiple people, although not usually you're aiming for one person, but just really nice AoE damage. Look at these ranges, 1,100 range on this. Up to 1,400 range on this. So yeah, it is very expensive, but you have Mana Flow Band, you're going to have blue buff mid lane, you're going to have Morellos, and you're going to have his passive, which is going to give you extra mana. So you're going to have so much extra mana that it's not going to be as much of an issue. And this has been a problem with him in the past, is that he just can't get enough mana early. Well, now you can, especially because of Mana Flow Band. So he really abuses Scorch, just a lot of things very, very well. So I think he's really oppressive in the mid lane. I think he's actually pretty good as support too. As he just wave clear, poke people out, and then just go towards the late game. So I think he has very favorable matchups. I feel like he's very good against Azir because he outranges Azir. He outranges Taliyah. Now he's going to have a problem against really hard engaged champs. So if like Leona gets on him, that's a problem. Or like Vi, or the thing is he outranges a lot of engage ranges. I mean, like Jarvan can still get on him. So if people get on him, he's going to die. He doesn't have a lot of peel. He doesn't have the same kind of utility as someone like a Taliyah or an Azir. He doesn't have as many answers to champions getting on him. But if he can stay really far in the back, if you have a good front line, you have a Maokai, or you have a Shen or something like that, that can hold people still, it's just impossible to beat him in a team fight, it feels like, if you can't get to him. Because he's just going to be so far back, and he's going to do so much damage. He's very, very oppressive if you have a good front line that can block for you. And that's becoming more and more likely because tanks are very popular in top lane right now. They're getting popular in the jungle. And in the support role, they're very popular. Like, you're seeing a lot of Leona, you're seeing a lot of Thresh, you're even seeing Shen in the bot role. Like, everybody's playing these Aftershock tanks, and that's very good because they can peel for you, but also you have so much sustained damage in fights because this stuff gets to be such a low cooldown. It's like 5-second cooldown to deal just a ton of damage. That, you know, I think that he can actually deal with tanks fairly well in long sustained fights. So I think he's really good, and I think a big part of it is he has such great harass with Scorch and Comet in lane, and, you know, they fixed a lot of his mana problems, especially early with Mana Flow Band. So, I mean, think about Mana Flow Band on him, right? So if you're level 3 or whatever, this costs 100 mana. You get 100 mana off of it, and you get an additional 8% of your mana back. You know, if you're missing, I don't know, 300 mana, I guess that's only an extra 24, but you're getting 124 mana every minute. So if you want to think about that, that's even just 120. That's 2 mana per second. That's 10 mana per 5. So that's really good. I mean, that's like 3 or 4 fairy charms worth of mana. So I think that's what's made him really strong, is that he counters a lot of these other closer range fighter mages, your Ryzes, your Azirs, even your Kassadins early on, and he scales really well into the late game. And the healer champions aren't as, like, Sona just got nerfed really hard. People can Soraka into you, but Soraka can get picked off and killed in the early to the mid game. Soraka's a very risky pick. So I just think, you know, he's the ultimate poke champion, and I think he's really, really strong in a lot of these matchups, because a lot of people just can't get to him right now through the tank front line. And if you don't get to him, it's just impossible to win fights or to win sieges against him. And he has a push and roam style. He can't physically roam down there fast enough most of the time, but he can ult, which is like a roam. It's kind of like a GPS type of roam. So he still fits that play style of someone like a Twisted Fate that has the push and roam. Someone like Twisted Fate or Taliyah. Okay. And then finally Anivia. Anivia's kind of an odd duck here, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on her. I would put her in my top 10 for sure. I mean, other honorable mentions that could be up here. There are a lot of really good champions. I mean, Corki, I think Cassiopeia is a sleeper. She's going to be really strong. A lot of good champions could be up here. But to round out my top 10, I have Anivia for a couple of reasons. Number one, she is a queen of wave clear, right? So a lot of these champions are very good at wave clear, but no one clears it like Anivia. Once she hits 6 and she has a good mana pool, no one's going to clear it like Anivia does. So it's just impossible to push through this champion. So it's really, really difficult to close out games. It's really difficult to engage on her, even with tanks. I mean, if you're trying to go in on her, or someone close to her, even with like a Maokai, like she's going to put a big dent in that Maokai once she gets some items. She does really, really heavy sustained damage. In team fights. So she has great wave clear, great tower defense, great siege offense, really good sustained damage in fights. I mean, if you look at some of this damage on her, it's just like jaw-dropping damage on this champion. And people just don't see her a lot. But if you've ever played against a good Anivia, you'll just be like, my god, that thing is so annoying to try to deal with. How do we even fight it? I mean, if you look at her ult, it's 240 damage per second that she activates it. So it's 240 damage per second. And it slows for up to 60%. And has a 0.37 ratio. So like even someone like Maokai can't just sit in this. And it gets to be a pretty huge range. And then also you do double damage. So that's 300 damage with a 1.0 ratio if someone sits in this on a 4-second cooldown. That's a lot of damage. I mean, you're talking 240 damage per second, and then every 4 seconds you're getting smacked for an additional 300 with a 1.0 ratio on it. Her Q also does massive damage. I mean, 320 with a 0.8 on an 8-second cooldown. So she has really low cooldowns, very, very high sustained damage. Like, she will carve those tanks up. I mean, maybe not as fast as someone like an Azir, but she can definitely carve some people up with her damage. She has pretty good assassination protection with her rebirth. If she's under tower, it makes it very difficult for someone like Zed or Talon to completely zero her out. Now, it is on a long cooldown, but that does offer some protection. It's very annoying to know that she has her egg to try to go in and pick her off in a team fight, because you just know she's going to egg and survive through it, and you're going to die. So she gets a free GA every 6 seconds, which is pretty nice. Great wave clear, great sustained damage. Now, her big issue is she can't roam. Okay, so that's why she's down here compared to someone like Taliyah or Twisted Fate or whatever. She cannot roam. She's very slow. She only has 325 move range. Now, she has a long auto attack range, which is very helpful. But, you know, for lane harass. But she does not move very quickly at all. So she's just basically like a siege engine. You know, she sieges very well. She wave clears very well. She's very good at zone control with things that are around her, but she cannot rotate to fights. So I think teleport could be really good. I mean, flanking somebody from behind with Anivia can be strong. So I think teleport's good on her. And she has pretty good itemization pass. Like, typically, she'll go tier and rod, I think. So she has a ton of mana. You should probably go tier Rod Liandry's, I would guess. Yeah, pretty much. Rod, tier, Liandry's. She doesn't have to get Rylai's because obviously she has a lot of slows, but Liandry's is a ton of damage that reinforces her sort of tank damage that she does. She needs a ton of mana, but once you complete this, you get that extra shield. That's really powerful. Rod's really good. So she's kind of a slow champion, not super dangerous early. She does have a stun, so if you have a jungler that comes in and ganks and you can hit your stun, she does a lot of damage. Like that Q, the double hit on the Q, plus the stun. So a double hit, you know, is going to do... You're going to max your E first, typically. But yeah, at level 5... You know, that's going to be 320 with a 1.8 ratio. So, you know, you're going to be looking at like 400 damage, level 5 or so, if the if your jungler comes in to gank with the stun. I think it's a 1.5 second stun. They're slowed. Oh, 1.2 second stun early on. Okay. 1.1, 1.2. So, decent stun, decent damage early on, but she's not a powerhouse. But she can usually farm pretty safely because she has 600 range. So if it's just kind of a farm off, if you're against she's a pretty good pick into assassins, as I said before, because she has a stun and she has the egg to kind of protect her. But she's just really, really good sustained damage. So most of the time, and also her wall. Similar to Azir, you can just put this wall up and peel back tanks off of your AD carries. If you're fighting in the jungle, you can completely seal people off on the ramps or in different areas of the map. So, you know, if you just get into a fight in the jungle and like half of the enemy team's here, like 2 or 3 of them are here, and the rest of them are coming, you can seal them off here to keep them from escaping, to keep the others from joining. Really popular place to seal would be like here. If you're doing dragon, their jungler tries to come up and poke their head in here. The rest of the team's right here. You just seal them off, kill them. Around here you can seal, you know, even if like someone's trying to run away, like you roam bot lane, and you know, someone's trying to run this way to run away, you can seal them off right here. So there are a lot of places, especially in the jungle, where you can really abuse that wall. But even if it's not in a jungle, just putting a wall between, you know, the Maokai is chasing your AD carry, or the Shyvana is chasing your AD carry, just being able to put a wall there to cut them off can be really strong. So I think she's great at everything except for roaming. So she has great siege, great wave clear, insane like sustained damage in fights. But she just doesn't quite have the roam. She doesn't quite have the range. So she's very, very good for solo queue, but just not quite as good as the tier 1 champions. Okay, and then some of the last ones here. So these are viable. Dang, it's 100. I meant to make this faster, but dang it, the tier list just always takes some time. I'm not going to talk about all these. Each one of these could be really strong in their own right. Mid is the most diverse role, and it almost always is. You can make just about anything work if you play it correctly, but these 10 are just going to give you the best chance at that. So Corki, I'll just go through these really quickly. I'm not going to click on them that much, but Corki, similar, good sustained damage as you level up because he gets Trinity, Infinity, Rapid Fire Cannon, pretty good poke. He's still going to have a problem against tanks. He's not going to do as much sustained damage as someone like an Azir or as someone like an Anivia in a team fight. But he is very good early as a bully, especially once you pick up your Sheen in lane. So you can bully out some of these champions, especially like a Katarina or a Leblanc. You do have the option of going Hex Drinker, which is really nice against some of these all-in burst champions like Leblanc and Cat. He has good roam once he picks up his package. It's only every now and then. He can kind of have some mana problems early, but the fact that he can get the mana flow band as well helps him out. So you just want to go, you're going to want to go like Trinity, Infinity, Rapid Fire Cannon, then you get a Hex Drinker if you have to in there. So he's gone up a lot in the preseason, yeah. Now, a lot of them don't have Hex Drinker, but I think Hex Drinker is good in a lot of matchups. Now, Fleet Footwork is something that just got buffed, and I did notice an interesting thing about Fleet. If I can find my runes tab here. There we go. Is that it does have an AP ratio. Now, you're not going to get a lot of AP on Corki, but that is an interesting thing to consider is that, you know, champions that do get hybrid damage, like if you wanted to get something like a Gunblade on Corki, which I'm not sure how good that would be. It's iffy. He does have some AP ratios, but they're not great. But it does have an AP ratio and a 30% bonus. I'm not sure, honestly. I mean, I guess you're going to want to run Fleet on him because you want Alacrity and Triumph. I would almost be tempted to just run something like Airy on him. Airy applies on autos and on abilities. I would probably just want to run like Airy plus Mana Flow Band, Celerity, and Scourge. I see a lot of people running this. It's, everybody likes his fleet footwork. I'm skeptical. I mean, I guess, yeah, you can get Mana Flow and Celerity, I suppose. That's what you would want to do, is just like Mana Band, Celerity, or Scorch, Mana Band, something like that. There's so much that's good in Sorcery. Like, I feel like you could just go Airy instead. Just go Airy, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch, and then over here, just grab Triumph and, like, either Alacrity or Coup de Grace. I mean, this does give him sustain in lane. It does give him some movement. I don't know. What are the pros doing? Is everyone doing fleet footwork on him? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess it's better than I think it is. I guess that's good. I mean, it does give him sustain in lane. It does give him movement speed to chase people down. Does reinforce him as an early game bully. So if you look at Frog in here, yeah, a lot of Q, Celerity, Scorch. Okay. I mean, I guess if you're not just spamming your Q, you probably don't need the mana band. His rockets are pretty cheap. And you are going to get extra mana off of Trinity. Get lifesteal. So the thing about Corki that makes him interesting mid lane is his auto attacks do magic damage. So he's basically like an 80 carry that does like sustained magic damage. So he does a lot more sustained damage than most mages outside of like Azir or Ryze. So that's why he's picked, is that he's relatively safe, he has good poke, and he has really high sustained damage. Pretty good wave clear, his roam's pretty good. But that's why he's picked, it's because he does nice sustained magic damage from the mid lane. That's why he's picked over someone like Lucian a lot of times, because you're going to have too much AD if you pick Lucian in this meta. Another one that I think is really strong that a lot of people are sleeping on is Cassiopeia. I think that she has been nerfed quite a lot. But I think that she's still really good, especially with Presence of Mind. Because, like, you could just level 2, 3, 4, 5. You could just go all in and just spam your Q on somebody and just run them out of lane. So pros are playing her, and she's really good right now, I think. Like, she's got 64% win rate. Now, it's a low pick rate. But the buff to Phase Rush is also huge on her. Now, they're not, it doesn't look like they're winning a lot with her these recent games, but, you know, I think that she's coming back a little bit, and they're planning some buffs for her next patch. I'm not sure what they are or if they'll go through, but I've seen that they're thinking about buffing her up a little bit. So we'll see how that goes, but they did just buff Phase Rush, and I don't see a lot of people using Presence of Mind on her. I think that could be it. Yeah, he's using it. He's got it figured out. So yeah, the combination of being able to use Phase Rush, Mana Flow Band helps her out a lot early. Transcendence is very good for later. Scorch. But yeah, I feel like 7 seconds of just free, like, E-spam on somebody is very, very oppressive in lane. And I think she can punish a lot of these champions that aren't great early, like Azir, Katarina. And she's very good at breaking tanks. She has very high sustained damage later in the game. She's excellent at just slamming Barons, slamming Dragons. So, you know, I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on her. I think she's very good, especially with the Phase Rush buffs. She's immune, or not immune, but she has 75% slow resistance now off of that Phase Rush. Like, yeah, she's not as fast as she used to be, but you still get the bonus movement speed off your Q. I just feel like being able to drop, like, 500 free mana worth of spell spam on somebody at level 2 and level 3 is just really, really oppressive early on in the hands of a strong player. If you just land that Q and just go all in with your E, just the fact that you're never going to run out of mana while you're doing that, really, really good. Really good. And then Coup de Grace adds the extra damage. So I think this right here, the way that Golden Glue has this laid out is how I would run it. And I think that she's really strong. Now, after she gets the buffs next patch, I think they're planning on reducing the mana cost on her E from what I saw, but we'll see how it goes through. I think she's very good. So she could easily be up here in tier 2, maybe instead of someone like Anivia. But right now, she's very, very difficult to play. She's one of the toughest mages in the whole game to play. And you know, she's still pretty weak early and she doesn't roam very well. So she's like an Anivia, a little bit harder to play, a little bit less reliable in terms of damage, less CC pre-6. So I think she's kind of a siege engine like Anivia that can potentially be a lot more aggressive in lane early for the kills, especially with presence of mind on a good player, and probably does more top-end damage to Baron and to tanks later in the game, at the price of having less utility and crowd control. I mean, her W is pretty nice, but depends. If you're a really good player right now and you get Phase Rush and Presence of Mind, I feel like she might be up here in Tier 1, maybe even Tier 2. I mean, I'm not sure. I feel like Presence of Mind is really strong, but maybe I'm overvaluing that on her. But I feel like that's something that's underexplored by a lot of people. And so I have her a lot higher than a lot of people would have her. But she could possibly sneak in a Tier 2. Syndra, very good, fairly low range, good all-in. One of the big problems, though, is people can get a free Hex Drinker pretty much with the runes. And that potentially hurts champions that are like all-in burst mages. So Nullifying Orb is just really, really good against that level 6 all-in. And then people can itemize into Banshees pretty easily. So, like, she's good. She has good wave clear. She has good, like, single target all-in. Her sustained damage is a little low. Her ranges are a little low compared to some of the other champions. And her roam is just not quite as strong as some of the other champions. So, she is good. She does have potential. But I just think she's not quite as strong as the other champions. You can certainly, if you're a great Syndra player, you can still win. But, you know, things like Nullifying Orb are going to make your life a little bit more challenging in a lot of situations. Annie is another one. Very easy, you know, monkey type of champion. And I don't say that to be, like, derogatory, but very simple, reliable type of champion, like Kassadin. But she's very susceptible to getting killed pre-6. She has no escapes. Her crowd control is very limited. Her roaming is very limited. She is nice on the roams, but she doesn't have any sort of extra speed boosts or global influence like TF, Xerath, Taliyah, Kassadin. And she can potentially, I mean, if she gets crowd control, she can get murdered by someone like a Katarina or a Leblanc in lane. She is very good, though. I mean, if these champions don't get Hex Drinker, which these probably won't, you know, she can be very good level 6 all-in, and she does have a point-click stun, which is excellent with junglers, is excellent in team fights. So, you know, don't ever count Annie out, you know, especially bronze and silver. I think Annie could easily be Tier 1. I mean, there is Annie bot who made it to Challenger playing Annie. So she's a very simple, very powerful champion. She's just very close range with very limited crowd control outside of her ult. And I just think she can get muscled out by longer range champions with good all-in potential. So someone like a you know, Taliyah, she can probably muscle up on Azir, but someone like a Taliyah, someone like a Xerath, or people like Malzahar is very good because his little shield blocks her Tibbers potentially, and he can just flash ult her and kill her early on. So I think she has a bad matchup against Malzahar, is very good and powerful. I don't think her matchup against Kassadin is great. It's okay, but, you know, if he takes Nullifying Orb, which he can, and then once he starts to get Catalyst and get a couple of levels in his Q, your life's gonna become a lot harder, and he can just spam Qs on you in lane and run you out of lane early. So I think she has bad matchups against 3 of the top 4 champions, and pretty bad matchups against Xerath, Veigar, who's becoming a bit more popular, Anivia. So, and Corki, matchup against Corki is awful, I think, because he can run Hex Drinker and Nullifying Orb early and just really muscle her out. So Corki is a nightmare matchup, I think, for Annie mid lane. So she's okay. She does have counterplay. Silver and Bronze, a lot better, but she's still pretty good. Ezreal is just really strong. You can play him almost anywhere. He has great poke, great scaling. They did nerf him a little bit, but I still think Klepto Ezreal can be really strong in the mid lane, potentially. Talon is another one. Very good, must snowball early. Very, very hard time killing tanks. He's a lethality user, and I think lethality users just get murdered by Shen, Maokai, Ornn. There's a lot of these, Leona, a lot of these tank type of champions are just going to murder him, especially people that get Locket plus Face of the Mountain. There's going to be so many shields. It's just really hard. You have to snowball very, very early. And I just feel like a lot of these champions can play safe. He's pretty good into Kassadin. But a lot of these other champions can play safe enough to work around him. Orianna, very, very good. At Challenger level, Orianna would be tier 1. But she just doesn't roam fast enough. Pretty high skilled champ. Doesn't have a lot of sustained damage in fights. So she's pretty good. Pretty decent burst. Range is a little short compared to some of the other ones. Doesn't roam. Decent wave clear. But she's got really good utility. She has the shield. She's a good pick into Assassins because she gets the free magic resist armor shield. She can run Nullifying Orb easily. So, good champion. But just a little too team... I hate to use the word team reliant. But just doesn't have enough raw power for lower level solo queue, platinum and lower. Galio is kind of a question mark. He just got buffed on this patch. He just got an extra damage, ratio in his rotation. He could be overpowered again. I don't know. I haven't played a lot on this patch. So I've kind of got him down to tier 3 just for safety. Galio always could potentially be a threat. My thought is that he just doesn't provide enough power. But if you have something like a Fiora top lane or a McCain jungle and you just need a tank, I think Galio is the best tank option in the mid lane. So we'll see. He could be overpowered again. I just haven't played enough on the patch. But I think he's still pretty good. Ryze, awesome pro support, really bad in solo queue. Historically, almost always has been. He takes a very long time to get going. You have to charge up that tier, and he just doesn't do a ton of damage early. He's very skill dependent. He has, you have to get his rotations down. He does have some roaming potential. It's very short range early on, but he does have some roam, and he has really high sustained damage. So if you're very good on Ryze, you can take over the game. It's just, I think if you want to play a high skill cap champ and just really master it and be strong, I think that you would be better off investing your time into something like Azir or Katarina or Leblanc for solo queue. If you want to go for the high skill cap, I would just play those instead. Vel'Koz, very strong, good poke champion, very good sustained damage against tanks because he has true damage on his ult. I think Xerath is probably better at doing what Vel'Koz wants to do, but I think for solo queue anyways, but I think that Vel'Koz can be pretty strong. I just think that Xerath is the king of poke right now, and that Taliyah is also really good. Taliyah is kind of the queen, but Vel'Koz can still be really strong. He doesn't have escapes. He doesn't roam very well, but he does have great wave clear. He has great objective control and really good team fight damage, especially against tanks. So I think Vel can be pretty good. Other picks, Morgana. I've heard that she's really overpowered mid lane. I haven't seen it. I've heard people are trying to play her in the jungle. I think she's probably overhyped, but I haven't seen it. So to be fair, I mean, she could be as high as tier 1. I don't know. It's just, for me, she doesn't have a lot of escapes. She has really long cooldown on her Q. It's relatively easy to counter with like a Mikhail's or a Cleanse. Almost every mid laner is going to take Cleanse against Morg. I just think there's a lot of counterplay to what she's trying to do. She's very skill shot dependent. So she's okay. I mean, maybe she's better than I think she is with the with her buffs, but we'll see. I mean, I know statistically she's doing very well. I don't rate champions strictly on statistics. I think about them critically and try to work my way through it. So she has gone up a lot, but I'm still skeptical. I think she's okay. She's a decent sort of kind of counter pick. I just think she just doesn't do enough sustained damage, and there's just too much counterplay to her. Echo, if you're a pro Echo player, he can be good, but he is melee, and it's tough to be melee in a heavy poke meta where, everybody's going to be running Scorch and either Airy or Comet. He doesn't use either one of those that well early, and I think he just gets abused. So he can be really good, but if you want to run a melee champion that's dangerous, that scales really well, I'd rather just run Kassadin or probably even Katarina. But Echo can be strong. Ahri, good safe champion, pretty good roaming, has 3 flashes to get away. I just think she's going to get murdered by a lot of these other champions, but she's okay. She just doesn't scale as hard, and she doesn't have as much utility, but she is very safe. So she's got that going for her. You can definitely win with Ahri if you're good with her. Karthus got some buffs, has the, global pressure, but very squishy, easy to abuse at all stages of the game. There's a lot of counterplay to his ult now. Everybody's going to get like Nullifying Orb, Locket, Knight's Vow, Redemption. There's just so many answers. Hourglass, Hex Drinker. There are probably a dozen different answers to Karthus. So back in the day, Season 1, a lot of those items didn't exist. Locket didn't do that. There was no Redemption. Hex Drinker was a crap item that didn't upgrade into anything. Hourglass existed. I don't even remember what it did back in Season 1, but he used to be really, like, okay, you know, in Season 1 and Season 2, but there are just too many answers today, and he just doesn't, he just has a really outdated kit. Now, if they did something like, is immune to all shields, or hits people even through Hourglass, which I think would be okay as Karthus, just to make it, like, really, like, there is... It's very dangerous to do that, though. Or just, like, maybe ignores half of shields or something. Like, he's just a very difficult champion to balance because he hits everyone on the map. So, I think they need to rework him a little bit before he becomes more viable, but he's alright. Zed, really high skill cap champion, similar to Karthus. There's a lot of counterplay to his ult in a lot of situations. Like, obviously, if he just goes on the AD carry, like, the AD carry himself or herself can't do a lot. But with the support nearby, there are a lot of answers. So, he's alright. Akali, pretty good top laner, a lot more vulnerable mid lane. She's alright. If you get ahead, you can definitely dominate, but melee champion against a lot of poke, not a great place to be right now. Ziggs, good poke. If you just want that style of champion, I would rather just play Xerath or Anivia or just something else. Good poke, he just is a lot squishier, doesn't have as much utility in fights. He does take towers extremely fast, so that's something that he has going for him. So, you know, if you're a really good Ziggs player, you can definitely win with him. Fizz, good assassin, but melee champion almost always gets dumpstered in lane. If you just want to get dumpstered and take over the game later, just play Katarina. I think she has a much stronger single item power spike than he does. He's going to be getting Proto Belt. She's going to be getting Gunblade. I just think that she hits the gas and gets going a lot faster than he does. So he can be very strong. If you get ahead, Fizz is very difficult to stop, especially if he consistently hits those fish. But, you know, I'd rather just play LeBlanc or Cat if you want, you know, something like that, or even Kassadin. I just think that melee mid laners are really hard to play right now, and the only reason to play them is if they just take off like a rocket ship, either with Kassadin being unstoppable later or Katarina just taking over the game off of one item. So if you're into that, if you're into going dumpster diving and coming out with treasure, I would just play Katarina if you want to get dumpstered early, and then just, you know, save the Fizz. I mean, he's okay. Once again, lots of counterplay. People have time to react to that fish. You know, lock it. Redemption's a little slow, but they can still lock it. Knight's Vow. It's just a lot of stuff. So he has heavy burst damage, very low sustained damage, and they have, you know, 2 seconds to react to the fish to put some kind of shields on somebody. So he's okay, but can have some problems. Vlad, pretty good matchups into a lot of champions. I think he's pretty good into Malzahar. Pretty nice scaling, tanky-esque type of damage. If you're a very good Vlad, you can definitely take over the game. But he doesn't have crowd control, doesn't have any kill threat in lane. Difficult-ish to gank, but it can be done if he's pushed up in lane. Really low roaming power, only decent wave clear, low objective control. But he is tanky, he is difficult to kill, he is pretty good against a lot of these assassins, in theory. So he's okay. Swain, very similar profile. High sustain, difficult to kill. Of these two, actually, I'd probably rather play Swain mid than Vlad most of the time. Now, Swain can be a stomper. I mean, if you're really good with him. Like, he does have crowd control, whereas Vlad doesn't if you land it. Pretty good scaling. He just gets countered by Executioner's Calling pretty easily, and that's a problem. And Morellonomicon. So there's a lot of Morellonomicons, there's a lot of Executioners going around, so that just kind of cuts a lot of his power. But he does have the stun, he does have a slow. You know, you can run things like probably Rod, Rylai's, Leandri's, and be pretty strong on him. So I think that he can be good. He just takes a long time to get going. And I think if you just want to take a long time to get going, there's going to be other champions that you would rather probably play. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the rest. Like, you can win with Lux, Brand, Aurelion. So I know someone's going to say, but I'm really good on Diana, or I'm really good on Veigar. Oh my god, Zillion, dude, he's so overpowered mid lane. Or, you know, I play like a super mean Fiddlesticks mid lane. Or I saw this challenger play Lysandra mid lane, or Heimerdinger. Yes, you can win with everything, okay? Mid is very diverse, but somebody has to be lower than somebody else. That's the nature of a tier list, right? And so this is targeted towards a broad audience, people that are platinum and lower mostly. And the way that I do it, you know, it's just top 10 or tier 1, tier 2. Tier 3 is the next 10, and Tier 4 is the next 10, and that's the top 40. Okay, so yes, some of these could be up here if you're really good with them. I know Lux would probably be Lux and Zillion. I'll probably hear about it from some people for that. But just in general, you know, one champion has to be lower than another, and champions always exist relative to other champions. So can you win with Lux? Yes. I just think that that style of champion, the poke, you know, long range, all-in burst, is just better done by Xerath and Vel'Koz for a variety of reasons. And so, yes, you can win with those champions, but I just feel like there are champions that are going to be each tier that goes down. I feel like there are champions above them that are just typically better at what they want to do most of the time. So, for example, Taliyah, I think, just does what Twisted Fate wants to do better than Twisted Fate does it most of the time. Okay? So, I think that, you know, Katarina does what Echo wants to do better than Echo a lot of the time. So, that's it. You know, I know it's going to offend somebody on the tier list, but these are just my thoughts on it. Hopefully this helps you kind of figure out where I think the meta is right now. Sorry the video ends up running a bit longer. All my tier lists usually are kind of on the long side, but I haven't done one in a while, so I just wanted to catch everyone else up to speed. So thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.